Hello and welcome to the channel. For a little while now I've wanted to make a video on how guitar pedals work in terms of what they do to manipulate your guitar's signal, but I could never quite figure out a good way to demonstrate this. But I think I've finally figured that out. So today we're going to be creating effects without using pedals. So we'll start with an easy one. We'll start with delay. That was so stupid. Anyway, let's jump over into Logic and get into it. Okay, so delay is a pretty straightforward one and I'm sure you can pretty much figure it out just from hearing it. But what delay is doing is it's duplicating your signal and playing it back later. So if I play something in here, okay, so we have our recording. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this and then push it back slightly. And I'm also going to drop the volume of the track by a few dB. And then I'm going to do the same again. And that gives us something that sounds like this. So there you go. Sounds like delay. Now moving on, our next effect is chorus. So what happens with chorus is, again, your signal is duplicated and then the second signal is pitch shifted slightly. So I'll play in another section and then we'll do that. Okay, so that's our clean signal, and then if we duplicate that, I'm then going to use the built-in pitch shifter tool. I'm going to set the mix to 100% and just detune it by, say, 20 cents. So straight away you can hear that gives you the sort of chorusing sound. And then if you want to get that chorusing sound pulsing, like you get when you change the rate control on your chorus pedal, what you can do is automate the amount that it's being detuned by. And that gives you something like this. So you can hear that you then get that pulsing effect. So, moving on to our third effect, and our third effect today is phaser. Now phaser works in a very similar way to chorus in that it doubles and then combines your dry signal with another signal, but instead this time your duplicated signal is having the phase of it changed. Now the way this works is due to something called phase cancellation. So when you have an audio signal, it's an alternating current. If you have two tracks playing the same signal, if they alternate and stay together and look like they're exactly the same, then they're in phase. If the way in which they alternate is different, then they're out of phase. When this happens and you combine the signals, they can cancel one another out. Think of it like they're being added together. If you have an amplitude of 20 on one side and the signal that it's being combined with has an amplitude of -10, then some of that will cancel out and you'll get an amplitude of 10 out of it. So to demonstrate this, if I play in and then duplicate the track and completely phase reverse it, you'll hear nothing. So I'll record in our dry signal. So if I now duplicate this, if I then use the gain function within Logic and phase invert it, then it should completely cancel out. So when I play it, you'll hear nothing like this. Whereas if I turn that off, you can hear it again. Now that's when both tracks are 180 degrees out of phase, you get complete cancellation. But what we're interested in is only partial cancellation, because that's when you get your interesting effects. I'm going to use Waves Audio's In Phase plugin. And what this allows me to do is by delaying the signal by tiny amounts, I'm talking single-digit milliseconds here, it allows me to change the phase and get some of that phase cancellation. So with that open, I'm just going to automate it. So I've got the automation set up and the delay is just under 2 milliseconds, which should just be enough to give us a bit of phase cancellation, which sounds like this. Now that's not particularly strong phase cancellation, but this plugin isn't really designed for that, so it's just for demonstrative purposes, but hopefully you can hear that there is a bit of movement and cancellation going on there. Now moving on, and our next effect is flanger. Now you're probably starting to see a bit of a theme here, but all of these modulation effects work by duplicating the signal and then modulating or doing something to them and then recombining with the dry signal. Now it's the same story with the flanger, but what we're doing here, we're delaying the, if you want to call it the wet signal slightly, somewhere up to about 20 milliseconds. So I'm going to use the same piece of audio that we recorded for the phaser. I'm going to duplicate that again. And this time I'm going to use the built-in sample delay in Logic. We'll link the left and right because we're only interested in keeping this in mono. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to automate the amount of delay between 0 and about 20 milliseconds. So that sounds something a bit like this. Now I'll just mention at this point as well, when it comes to your rate control on any of these modulation effects, so your chorus, your phaser or your flanger, what that is effectively doing is changing how close these points are together. So the rate at which your modulation happens effectively. So if we want a faster flanger sound, for example, if we move these closer together and then add in a few more, then that should give us a faster rate of modulation, which sounds something like this. Might be a bit too fast on that one, but it gives you a demonstration of the idea. Now I've got one more effect for you, but a bit like with the phaser, this is going to be a bit tricky and probably won't give us the best results, but it should demonstrate to you what the pedal is doing, and that's the wah pedal. Now again, I'm just going to be using the EQ curve for this one that's built into Logic, and obviously this isn't designed for this purpose, so the results might not be perfect, but it should demonstrate. So I'm just going to record us a dry signal once more. Okay, so we have our dry signal, and now I'm going to put the EQ on. And really what the wah does is it filters out a lot of the low end of your guitar. It then gives you a boost around the upper mids, a bit like that, and then filters off the top end of your guitar as well. And then what rocking your pedal back and forward does is it moves both of these back and forward. Now unfortunately it won't let me do them together and demonstrate that, but what I can do is I'll play it and I'll move it in real time, and hopefully that will demonstrate to you kind of what it's doing. We'll move the boost to start with because that's kind of, that moving gives you the sort of wah sound that you expect from a wah. So that's something like this. And then that combines with the top end moving, which cuts a lot of the high out. I know that isn't the best sound ever, but it should demonstrate to you at least roughly what the pedal is actually doing when you're using it. So there you go, I hope this video shone some light for you on what your pedals are actually doing when your guitar's plugged into them. Let me know down in the comments whether you'd like to see another video like this for any other effects. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.